Hello, welcome to the EngageTech YouTube channel. My name's Amelia Loye, and today I'm going to be speaking to Matt Gordon from OurSay. Hi Matt, welcome.
Hello, how you going?
Excellent. So Matt and OurSay were one of 6 sponsors that participated in the EngageTech Forum in New South Wales on the 1st of November in 2008. And today I've asked Matt to just share the same demo that he shared with all the participants at the forum. It's a 15-minute demo. He's going to show us some of the features of his product, which is a piece of software for community and stakeholder engagement for government. Matt, I'm going to hand over to you in a couple of minutes, but then after you demo, Matt and I will have a little bit of a conversation, and it's the same conversation I'm having with all the sponsors and all of the product demos of engagement software. And hopefully through those questions, through that Q&A, you'll get some of the answers that you need for other people in your organization, like your Chief Information Officer, your Chief Digital or Technology Officer, and also your Privacy Officer. So thanks, Matt. Thanks for giving us a bit of an overview of the features, and also thanks for your participation in the forum. I know lots of people really enjoyed what you had to show them. So
Thank you. Great to be involved.
It's a nice show and tell.
Okay, so welcome to OurSay. We're a technology and services company that uses intelligence to drive public sector performance. We believe gone are the days of the conventional online engagement website. We know from what we see in the public sector that the public sector performance kind of really demands a cutting edge technology, but with added potency of human insight. After all, the reason we do community engagement is to continue to nurture and grow the trust of the public sector in the eyes of the community. And that's what community engagement is all about, and that's what we're about. Today, I just want to give you a high-level demo on some of our features and the way some of our customers across local government and the water industries are using OurSay to engage both their communities of interest as well as their customers. So an example of one of the participation and inclusion outcomes that we drive through our services is the establishment of have your say style web portals, where organisations like the City of Parramatta can really point to user-friendly, open, outward-looking online community engagement style and user experience to really help get the community involved and participating in important issues that affect them in the local community. So here's an example of the City of Parramatta's homepage. Nice, easy buttons to click through. We take a huge focus around user experience and the end user experience. Sometimes that does mean, some tough kind of conversations with some of our customers in the public sector to kind of get the settings right. What we know about decision making and the development of policy within local governments in particular and state governments generally is that there's a policy process to follow, but often that process doesn't really suit people and people in the community, and it can take some sharp, cogent thinking to really map out how do we want to involve people over the long term and have a sustainable engagement practice. And so really this is part of our focus of kind of having a people-first approach to our engagement. We have a variety of charismatic community engagement tools. All of them we have designed in direct collaboration with all of our customers. At OurSay, we sort of use an agile development methodology, and this means that every week we are deploying new features and new functionality based on the direct feedback that we get from customer users and end users. And so this one of our latest tools is an interactive map. Here's an example of the City of Greater Geelong using an interactive map to do a couple of things. One is to kind of inform and educate the community about what is social infrastructure and what social infrastructure is happening around them where they live. And then the second thing to this engagement is to help that same community then kind of respond or react to their built environment and identify for the City of Geelong, Greater Geelong, what are the pain points, what are the kind of the access issues to these facilities and these assets across the community, and how might we get better utility of these facilities. And so using this kind of feedback mechanism and information to both inform the principles and directions for social infrastructure planning for the city, but also what are the things that the simple quick wins we can do right now in terms of improving access, things like ramps or, fixing the roof or, improving that path over there and so forth. So really interesting approach to getting some valid, targeted, useful information from the community about improving social infrastructure and services. Another example of our map being used is by the city of Frankston. This is really asking people in the community that when they have an interaction with wildlife across the city, to document that interaction. And so this project's called Wanted, Dead or Alive, and it's mapping Frankston's wildlife friends. And what we've really found with this project is without even really designing this concept, we've kind of turned it into a citizen science project. It's fascinating to every morning you log on around 6 in the morning and you've seen all the morning walkers out and you've seen where they've walked and all the interesting things they've seen. And some have actually taken photos and shared those interactions. And so you get some really cute encounters. So these are sort of more interactive, visual mapping tools. We find these sorts of tools really can help take the heat out of conversations, can really empower the community to understand what's happening around them and help inform organisations about some decisions around these issues. We also have a forum tool, a discussion forum tool. This really promotes two-way dialogue with the community. In the forum tool, we invite the community to submit their ideas in open free text, and we then invite them to support or comment on other people's ideas and share other people's ideas. What we've found is just by opening up the conversation, like what is going to make you want to use this park again and again, we get people telling their stories. We get people sometimes telling their whole life story. And this is a really interesting way to kind of capture not only quantitative information, but also qualitative information. What are the perceptions of the community? What are the attitudes of the community around these facilities? That can be quite daunting though, because through our tools of increasing participation and inclusion, we do tend to get a lot of data coming in through the back end. So it's really important for our customers to have a solid and robust reporting tool and analytics tool. So over time, we've developed the OurSay dashboard. This provides quick links to different tools and engagement styles. So, create forums to have that two-way dialogue, polls for a quick snapshot on opinion around different topics, surveys for, more designed analytical approaches to inquiry, just pages to increase the access to information and content, to avoid the use, the publishing of PDFs that are large and unwieldy and limit access to content. So we've created some blog style kind of pages where people can really help educate and provide in plain English and in plain format information about projects and things happening in the area. And then landing pages as well. This can be the anchor point for an organisation, the have your say website, or it could be something as simple as a specific project page, the council and budget landing page, and so we can focus and segment our engagement in different ways. We also get a real-time read on what's happening on the site right now, with very easy kind of reporting mechanisms to kind of compare what's happened this week as compared to the previous week, what type of devices people are using when they come to the platform, and so forth. Fast links and filters to all of our engagement projects, whether they be forums or polls, maps, landing pages. And through this, we can get more targeted reporting, project-based reporting. So a forum, maybe what would make Tas your #1 travel destination. We can kind of see how many people have visited this kind of conversation, how many people have then participated and engaged and been involved. But then we can start tracking our engagement based on number of ideas posted and by who and by when, and votes and comments, and get a real understanding of the shape of this engagement by demographic. how often the sites visit, and what are our best days for engagement, what are our best months for engagement, and then an interactive reporting map which really highlights kind of where is the engagement coming from on a geographical basis. And as you can see, you can really zone in on key areas within your community at a very granular level. And interestingly, we've found this a useful tool to ensure that engagement is representative. And so that fast reporting and that fast feedback to kind of go, actually, are we getting to the places where people are hanging out? We do collect a lot of free text, commentary and feedback from community. We use the idea that keep it simple, stupid. So that open dialogue box where we just say, hey, here's some information about what we're trying to do. What are your ideas? That unstructured feedback can sometimes come in very emotive forms and can be unwieldy. And so one of the things that we've identified is that really successful engagement has then a long lag time in terms of then analysis and interpretation of what the community is saying. And what we're sort of hearing on average is that any particular community engagement facilitator or lead that's using an online tool will spend up to about 5 weeks coding the information that they're getting from the community, trying to make sense of it. And really, we think that's an extraordinary amount of time to be filtering and sifting through large data sets. I mean, you can imagine, when you've got 1,200 comments, just trying to, interpret that, not to mention close the loop and play it back to the community. So we've built a simple sentiment analysis tool. This is now native to all of our polls, surveys, forums, and maps. What it does is it takes open free text feedback and does all the crunching for you in terms of positive sentiment, negative sentiment, affinity and tags and keywords, summary analysis, breaking down long essays down into 3 sentences. And it spits all this information out into an Excel spreadsheet where you can get a real snapshot, a real breakdown of, what are the issues that people are talking about? What's positive about that? What's negative about that? How does that compare to what other people are saying? And who are these people? And sort of tying them back to geodemographics makes this a really powerful tool to test the perceptions and attitudes of your community around particular topics, and then get that report back instantaneously. So these are some of the things that we've been working on. We would love to work with more customers who are prepared to kind of really push and take things a little bit further and really progress the industry around community engagement. We feel this is a sector that's screaming for more precision, more data, more analysis, more targeted focus, so we can really focus on that challenge of public trust. Community engagement's a great activity to work on, but if it erodes public trust, it can be extremely dangerous. And so one of the things that we want to do is make sure community engagement's done well online. Just a couple of, in terms of some of our support services, we meet the digital service standard criteria put out by the federal government. We test individual pages against Web Content Access Guidelines, the 2.0 version, looking at that sort of AA pass rate. All of our data is hosted in the Eastern Seaboard Cloud Availability Zone of AWS. AWS is a fantastic provider and offers some of the best data security globally. So we manage all of our data through them, and so data is held within the Australian, within the country of Australia. And in terms of service level supports, we respond to any help desk ticket within an hour, and we resolve critical issues within 16 hours. And our help desk is open from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. Monday to Saturday morning. Any questions?
I do have questions, Matt. Thank you. That was a great demo, and you've actually answered some of my questions already. But just to sort of recap and relay things, the methods, the features that you've got in your product to the EngageTech Spectrum, which I've been doing with all of our demos. You showed us Frankston, which is citizen science, which I think is what I would put into the category of crowdsourcing. I also quite liked Geelong, and you talked about pain points, crowdsourcing pain points as well as ideas and suggestions. So I really like both of those methods of engaging with people, particularly prior to consultation or even in an ongoing way, to crowdsource and generate ideas and information from your community. And I think it's a really wonderful way to start building up your database of stakeholders as well and understanding of their interests so that you can engage with them, if they give you permission, proactively for future engagements too. So yeah, they're looking really great, those features, and I'm really liking the way that some of those local governments are using them. So congratulations to you, and also to the local governments who are using them in those ways. It's really obvious that you've paid attention to user experience. The interface, both from a front end and the back end, looks really, really good. And I like how you showed us the forum as well. So the forum would sit on the discussion end of the EngageTech Spectrum, or the discussion point, which is a really interesting point on the spectrum, because as you say, it does generate a lot of information, and it's not necessarily on point, particularly if it's not facilitated. You mentioned, you know, the staffing side of engagement and online engagement, and how do we get that both to be meaningful and interesting and engaging, but also useful for the people who are collecting the data as well, and useful in terms of efficiency, but also quality of data. So one thing that I do recommend for anyone who's looking at discussion forums is to consider facilitation, because I think they work best when they do that. But I quite like your voting features in your discussion forum. I think it's great to invite the community to prioritise and show their interest, and I think that also gives feedback to the people who are participating, because I like to say it's not your democracy, it's our democracy. As a nice reminder to people that it's not just about your voice in the democracy.
Power to the people. Power to the people.
Yeah, it's about how we work together, and it's not always an easy thing to try to work out, you know, what is the general sentiment of the community, not just the loudest voices. So the other thing I want to highlight is at the bottom of the EngageTech Spectrum, we recommend to everybody who's looking at technologies for engagement that they consider how they're going to manage data collected across methods and also across projects. And we see that as really critical also for the management of data about stakeholders, so that you can, as you say, play back and close the loop, not just on projects, but invite stakeholders to participate in consultations that we know are going to affect them or interest them in the future. This is a real...
I completely agree with this. I think 100% one of the most effective things that can happen for the government sector from a community engagement perspective is to have a single view of their interactions with customers and citizens across multiple channels, because it's actually people that have had a direct experience with government where you're going to get most of your valuable insight and information. You know, it's the customer, as it were, that's going to drive service quality and aspirations within these organisations. And so I think this is a critical step, and you know, we'd be excited to integrate these tools into those types of CRMs so you can achieve, you know, that visibility that's so desperately needed.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, like, it's a big part of kind of visibility and trust. You talked about that a fair bit, Matt, and I think you know, where there's a lot of talk these days about smart cities and smart communities, and I think if government are to be smarter, it means actually understanding that sentiment from their community, but also understanding how representative these engagements are and how they might reach beyond the people who are proactively engaging with them, as well as leverage the desire of the people who are engaging with them to participate. And I think citizen science is a really wonderful example of how the community can contribute, not just by providing feedback, but by providing information that may be of value to the way that a community is governed and served. And that's really just one. So Matt, the questions that I ask, you've answered a lot of them. So we talk a little bit about, I ask a little bit about website integration, because that's, I mean, digital engagement, almost every single project team will have their own information to share, and usually they have to, the first person they need to speak to is the comms manager or the head of media in their organisation, and they'll say, we can set up a page for you, or they maybe want to use your tool as something specific. How do you work with those kinds of web teams and content management systems that government organisations have already got?
So part of the implementation work that we conduct is really about getting the architecture of the site to suit really the needs of the customer organisation. We're seeing two kind of approaches across the sector. One is a very centralised approach, often where a communications and community engagement team are kind of combined. And if the resources are there, we think this is a successful approach, because you can start to really lift the standardisation on the use and, well, the selection and use of tools, and also maintain a policy around your vision for data capture. So you're building on consecutive projects rather than building silos in terms of data and information and approach. There is the second approach, obviously, is a decentralised approach, which can equally be successful, although the main focus here will be not so much on technology, but on skills and leadership development across the organisation. Awareness and commitment to the policy and the strategy around engagement, the appropriate skills and tools made available, both technical tools as well as things like, planning templates, evaluation, methodology, reporting internally, so we can really understand the value of these activities. So the decentralised model we're sort of seeing requires a bit more of that capacity building across the organisation. This is something that we do. It's funny, but we are a technology provider, but we offer this lovely software, but we also provide warmware, which is the ability to change people's behaviours and people across your organisation, and really get them motivated behind a strategic direction with community engagement. So these are important integration pieces for us, as important as the technical integration.
Great, thanks, Matt. I think that's the two models that you've summed that up really nicely: decentralised or a more centralised approach, and also the importance of having a policy and building capability if you do have a decentralised approach. One of the areas where capability at the moment is, there's a lot of room for improvement, is understanding what types of these methods to be using when, on what types of projects. Do you provide your solution in a decentralised way as well, so people can purchase like modules, or is it a whole product sold as a solution?
We offer kind of a few levels. There are some organisations like to dip their toe in the water. So we sort of offer quite compelling, realistic and achievable packages, starting in the order of about $5,000 to, really, try a variety of tools, including maps, for their project, to kind of really understand how this is going to work in their community. And what we then see is further commitment and investment played down track, where we sort of level up to more professional or premium standards in our service. Yeah. We also provide that staged approach, but we also provide that underpinning capacity building. Ultimately, we like to see ourselves as an online facilitator. Mm-hmm. That sort of trusted third party that's supporting you around your moderation, helping you kind of reconnect and re-engage back with the community that you've been talking to, have those sort of friendly reminders of closing the loop, or maybe asking the question in a more involving way. So we sort of provide that kind of support alongside it. So we're quite agnostic. We like to match our services to where our client and our customer base is at.
Great. Thank you. Now you mentioned the AWS, so the data is hosted in Amazon Web servers in Australia. So that really, I mean, are there any other sort of security and data storage questions? Because one of the big sort of organizational cultural change pieces when you are procuring, and you said, well, I think it was something like tailoring. I like to use the word customizing or configuring these technologies to meet the needs of an organization. Usually you have to have a chat with the CTO or the CDO and the CIO about the information architecture. So where are you getting information for your maps, for example? But also, what does the IT architecture look like, and how does that meet the data security and information management requirements of the organization? How do you approach that? And I think that's a real differentiator between EngageTech and CivicTech, because people like yourself have gone through quite a long process with lots of organizations to really understand, accessibility. You talked about WC2 and WC3A, and really also how to integrate with these other kinds of products that these organizations are using. What's your advice to people, and what's the information you really think you need to give to them for those conversations?
Yeah, in terms of, we're coming into a sort of a funny era around, personal digital footprinting. Changes in the EU around how personal information can be managed by the person, the individual, is really shining a light on how do technology providers and product providers, which rely on the user. The user is their product, in the sense of who is the user and what they think is the product for, say, something like community engagement. And how do you kind of manage changing global community expectations around the management of this information? We've seen the fallouts from the Facebook scandals and large breaches of private information, often committed by governments. The rollback on the My Health record issue earlier this year at the federal level here in Australia. There's a really sharp focus of the community about being clear. Not only is our information protected, personal identifiable information encrypted and under lock and key, meeting the standards put out at the federal level. So aside from all that, how do you allow an end user to say one day on a digital service, I want all my commentary and my information back now, and I want you to delete my account and my entire digital footprint? What does that mean for the public sector record when it comes to engagement? How do you claw that back out of a community engagement report, for example? How do you offer the end user the tools to effectively manage their data and sort of say, well, look, I want to know that what I said is heard and resonates, but I just don't want to be. I want to be genuinely anonymous around that information after the fact. Really fascinating kind of questions. One of the things that we're focused on here is becoming GDPR compliant, which will mean we will effectively have the ability to operate globally, and that's not really about what's happening here in Australia. When I say operate globally, I mean the people that local governments and governments are going to be engaging here in Australia are global citizens, and so their expectations is kind of what we're meeting with GDPR compliance. And so I think this is kind of the interesting space that we should be focusing on as a public sector and as community engagement professionals, because more and more, in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be 100% digital, more or less. And so we need to be keeping up with these massive global trends. With respect to the suppliers that we use in terms of hosting, AWS is very well respected, gives you enormous security controls. We also offer a number of different services on that level. We have a shared cloud service which allows, for example, our customers to engage with other people in the community that have already engaged with OurSay, and so it's a sort of a shared community database, a single a single sign-on, whether the person in the community is a customer to your water board, or a ratepayer to your municipality. A single sign-on for them. But we also offer a dedicated solution as well, which is effectively your own instance, your own security protocol for your own platform. So you can control it depending on how else you manage your other IT risks and what works in terms of your broader IT strategy. So we're quite flexible in that domain.
Sounds good, Matt. So I guess my one additional piece of advice to people who are speaking to their privacy officer is that you also talk about getting consent on collection, and what does your consent statement look like? So thinking through how you might use this data, both for this project but also beyond the project, for some of the benefits that Matt and I have discussed, is really, really clever. And I think in inviting the engagement of your privacy officer and your chief information officer and your chief digital officer early in your process, perhaps even showing them this video, might actually help you get the tools that you're looking for your projects as well. So Matt, I want to go to reports. You showed us some really nice reports. I'm quite impressed with your interface.
Thank you.
Yeah, you've obviously done quite a lot of work on that over the last few years. What I'm interested in is the types of reports that people can get out of the system at the end of a project. Now, I know you showed us demographic data, which is a really interesting one to leverage off of the conversation we've just had, and it's about balancing, permissions for use of data. And I think, there's a lot of value in collecting data about the people you're engaging, because it does allow you to determine how representative your engagement is. It looks like you've also got some visitors data there, which is good to sort of understand what methods you're using for engagement are working and not working, and how you might refine your approach, both to reach a more representative sample, but also to try to engage people through channels that they're wanting to use. And Matt, can I just ask, just from the pure sort of data collection perspective, are you able to collect data across methods, across projects? And is that something that you recommend people do within your system, or should they export and use another system for that kind of analysis?
So we, as best we can, we tie together all the reports into the dashboard, depending on the tool. Each tool, you can sort of focus in on an individual report or results page for that particular engagement, and then we then through the landing page kind of identify your broad traffic movements through the portal itself. Mm-hmm. When it now comes down to project by project data, we have slightly different reporting requirements depending on the tool used. And this kind of relates back to the initial engagement with the community member, their expectations for what data is going to be shared, and kind of also that kind of tricky negotiation about, we want our communities to work really hard to tell us what we should be doing and focusing on, but that's valuable into their time. But what's the kind of the exchange in terms of how much information they provide? So the way we negotiate that is, if it is a public two-way dialogue and you are posting as a citizen ideas onto a public website that's hosted by a government, we require as a minimum threshold a way to follow you up. So we need an email account that's authenticated, so we know that it's you and you're a human. And we also want to capture a year of birth, a gender, and a location, postcode or suburb. We make that that requirement of information to be provided. We try to lower the barrier so we can make it easy for people to provide us that information quickly. And about a third will use a Facebook Connect, where it's a one click and you're in model, and we take that information and we report on it in order to help our customers kind of focus on what's happening in community engagement land. For things where it's a one-way street, like a survey or a poll, you're not publishing, your information is not being public, it's going into a black box. We hope good things are happening once it's in that black box, but it's going into a black box. we don't require an authenticated sign-up. You might like to ask who people are and how old they are and that sort of thing within your survey questions, but we won't require that in terms of needing to create an account. We think the leverage around that negotiation is not strong enough to ask for that information. So it can be an awkward kind of negotiation, I think, with the community, and we really try and focus in on a fine line, and therefore it's really important to get the right selection of tool at the beginning. And this is why I think it's really important to kind of focus on capacity, leadership, commitment to policy and strategy, because we want to understand how does community engagement piece fit into the broader vision for data capture.
I like the way you're looking at value for the user as well, and as a way of evaluating what's worth collecting, what's necessary to collect. And this is a great conversation to be having with your Chief Information Officer and your privacy officers. And it's also extremely important for what Matt and I talked about with like representation and increasing diversity of participation. So yeah, thinking about what I'm hearing from Matt, if I may mirror you back, Matt, is select your method and be strategic about the data that you're collecting and the way you're using it. I'm also heard from you, Matt, earlier in the conversation that you've got some new tools to do the analysis of sentiment and also large amounts of particularly qualitative data, which is a big, any crowdsourcing, so any, map-based engagement, any forums, those kinds of techniques do gather a large amount of data, particularly qualitative data and engagement. It looks like you've got some new, is it fair to say, artificial intelligence, machine learning methodologies? With some automation of the theming and coding of that data by the looks of things.
Yeah, we're not trying to take over anyone's jobs here. We're just trying to make their jobs easier, and so they can focus on the important strategic parts of their project. And we know that the community engagement officers, people collecting this, researchers, social researchers, spending a lot of time pouring through big data sets. And if you're going to ask the community to provide some feedback or consult on an issue, one of the promises you invariably will make is that you will read what they have to say. And so to genuinely live up to that promise, using artificial intelligence, we can take some of the heavy lifting out of it by initially, so every time someone posts, their information is being filtered through 3 analyses tools: sentiment, topical, and summary. And so at the end, you can kind of get the raw text, but then you can kind of initially get a breakdown, and you can start to sort of trying to get a faster at finding what is the flavour and what wind is the community blowing in terms of a particular issue. And I think this is really important because it helps us get to the next kind of set of analytical questions where the real insights come out, and that's where we want people to spend their time. To access this incredible AI, we offer sort of a broad sentiment just here on the screen on the whole landing page. Kind of go, today is my community happy or not? But what we're able to do is, say, for example, going into a forum report, we just simply hit text analytics here. I can then kind of target, do I want the questions that people are asking or the comments or both, and hit accept. And depending on the size of that data set, unfortunately, it can take a little bit of time to get that analysis done.
Can't be as long as all of us sitting there highlighting or trying to theme and code in Excel or a custom access database. I'm sure it's a lot faster than that.
For 8,000 rows of feedback, which is something in the order of about 25,000 comments, it takes about 45 minutes.
Look, that sounds really
it's still not immediate, which is
don't be so hard on yourself. It sounds incredibly useful. Thank you, Matt. And it's good to know that you guys have thought about sort of that deeper level of information tracking and issue tracking throughout projects. I'm sure that high level analysis is very useful on an ongoing basis, particularly to our elected officials and the community engagement staff who need to go out and face the community throughout the middle of a project. But it's great also to see that there's that deeper level of analysis of I often say the numbers don't say why. And I agree with you. I don't think that these techniques are going to put people out of a job. I think it's just going to allow us an opportunity to dig a bit deeper into the real value of what people are saying. So find the gems within the broader context. And also to ensure that the tools, I often say, we're programming the machines. It's the purpose of our generation. And when we look back in history, that's what we'll be known for. I think, getting that programming right, the machines are learning, but they're learning because we're programming them. But also from a community engagement professional's perspective, I think having that kind of higher level analysis done for us really does allow us to focus on the real issues that are in those gems, and also increasing diversity and representation in our engagements, and getting out there face to face and complementing what it is that we're doing online, as well as driving traffic to the online methods. So hopefully that'll result in some more effective online engagement, as well as more effective engagement offline, and more efficiency in the way this type of work's done, and more responsiveness, to be honest, from government.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've just got 3 more questions. The next one's about products that you integrate with, and we've talked a little bit about digital architecture, and I know you said that you've got a map-based engagement solution as well. What GIS platforms do you integrate with, or how do you work with government organisations who have already got maps? And the other layer on the EngageTech Spectrum, regardless of what methods you might use across the top of the spectrum to engage at different stages of your project or different stakeholders, we really recommend people consider information and issues management as well as relationship management. So for us, that's a really key part of the architecture for engagement. So can you talk about how you're integrating with some of the tools that government might be using? We've talked about content management system. We've talked a bit about reporting. We haven't talked very much about relationships and GIS.
Yeah, sure. Well, just on the GIS front, what we've learned is that every interactive map's going to be different, depending on the project and depending on the community. So it's not out of the box, because it does require some white gloves in terms of looking at what data sets that already exist that are owned by government, and how can we take those data sets and present them in such a way where we're really getting really provoking the community to respond to kind of what they're seeing. So imagine mapping out all the CCT cameras in a particular local government area, and just sort of showing the community, this is where we've got CCT cameras. Where do you feel safe or unsafe? And just to sort of provoke these kinds of conversations, I think we can really develop some very interesting kind of social engagement models around this. Really inform, educate the community around, being aware of what's happening around them, and pose the kind of questions around, the outcomes, public safety, so, really pushing those kind of conversations further and faster. So when we approach a mapping project, we sit down often with a GIS officer and we have a discussion of kind of what data do you have, what layers do you have, and we accept most formats as well. Typically we receive a GeoJSON file, we then upload it to a mapping area. We then work with the engagement team to select, the pins, the kind of the qualifying question, icons, everything, the legend, the center point, which language do you want it in? It's sort of any kind of numerous kind of ways that you want to design and present your map. It takes about 2 hours, an hour to brief and an hour to develop. So that's how we work with that. The other question you asked was about
relationships. So some organisations already have like a customer relationship management system, or a landholder database system, or a stakeholder relationship management system. And I think these tools are really important for promoting engagement and maintaining that information about citizens, particularly those who are participating. It's really critical with these additional methods for engagement and collection of that information that it gets fed into some sort of a system that allows us to understand individuals, organizations, and also honestly geographical. What's the relationship with a community, I think. So how do you guys work on with those kinds of products?
One of our next steps in terms of our project roadmap is API to really scale this out. What we don't see across the sector is particular consistency in CRMs that are utilised. This is tricky for vendors like us to kind of go, well, who do you plug in with? So the bridging opportunity is the development of an API, and we're noticing other vendors are doing this, and we think this is the way to go. So that's certainly on our project roadmap.
Thanks, Matt. I'm sure the CTOs and CDOs will be very pleased to hear that.
Yeah, it's just grab a key code, drop it in, it's done.
Yeah.
It's very simple.
Just reflecting back from what I've seen, it looks like you're providing quite a holistic solution, a technology solution with a variety of different methods across the top of the EngageTech spectrum, everything from crowdsourcing, prioritization and discussion, to some interesting ways of using some of these tools during a consultation process as well. And each of those methods has got a couple of different layers of considering sort of the information and issues management side of things, which I think is really, really, really great, Matt. This is what I would call an online engagement tool with some really great analytics, information and issues management features in the product as well. Matt, how would you describe your point of difference to other online engagement tools that provide surveys, polls, forums, and also some of the features that you've shared with us today? What's your big point of difference as an organisation?
Look, I really feel what we sort of avoid is a set and forget approach. We think that online community engagement is now a standard convention. So it's not remarkable to have one or not. What's remarkable is to have one and use it really well and strategically. And I think that just requires a sort of extra potency of some, deep human insights and some learnings that we've seen across the sector, and really sharing those learnings and creating as many interactions with our customers to share those learnings as possible. We think this is the way that we can really set the industry and set the sector up well for the future.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about warmware today, and also it sounds like you've really nailed that sort of 2-hour process of that designing the map-based engagement. I know that I've gone pretty deep with a couple of organisations on that, and if you're able to nail it in 2 hours, that's a very good value add. Well done. So if you'd like to get in touch with Matt from OurSay or his co-founder EL, you can go to their website, oursay.org. Matt, is there any other sort of calls to action that you'd like to suggest to anybody on the call who might be looking for more information about your product?
Yeah, just head to the website, oursay.org, hit up a free trial, get started, and it's very easy to just fall into our arms and we'll catch you. That's my call to action.
He did say charismatic, everybody. And wonderful. Thanks so much, Matt. I really appreciate your time. That was a really, really interesting and useful demo.
No worries. Awesome to work with you guys. Thank you so much to EngageTech for the opportunity. Fantastic.
Thanks, Matt.